Guys, let's start with Georgia's spring practice. And the banner player for me is Javon Bullard so far. He's got to follow up a pretty tough act that he had in his sophomore season.
Man, I'm going to throw this to Palmer because Palmer put in a grueling 3 days last week, back to back to back. He went like they don't go back to back in the NBA anymore, but Palmer did. He went 3 days in a row. So Palmer, take it away.
Yeah, no, I just thinking about what I was gonna stock up, stock down on for later. Javon was certainly something that came to mind. I think that he's proving to be a leader on this team already. Listening to him on Thursday after practice, you can tell that he's got the right mindset going into this year. To be determined what it looks like on the field for him, but in terms of stepping up as a leader off the field, I definitely think that he's one of the guys that's saying all the right things at this point. Fresh slate. Nobody's earned anything at this point. Nobody's got a starting position. They're cross training, getting everything going, being willing to play multiple positions, do whatever's best for the team. And I think Javon is somebody that this time last year we weren't thinking about him as a shoe-in for defensive MVP of the national championship game. I think if we were thinking about that, we would have said Jalen Carter or Nolan Smith or Jamon Dumas-Johnson was somebody that was getting a ton of noise this time of year. Keely Ringo, Chris Smith, those guys had proven themselves. Javon was somebody that had not proven himself, did so throughout the season last year, and now comes in.
I'm going to read Bullard's 2021 byline essentially from Georgia Dawgs on his player bio. Tell me if this sounds like somebody that you expected to have a breakout season in 2022. This is his 2021 as a freshman. Saw action in 14 of 15 games and finished with 12 total tackles. Played extensively in win over Charleston Southern and had a team-high 6 stops. Had 2 stops in win over Arkansas, credited with a solo tackle versus Vanderbilt and Missouri and an assisted tackle versus UAB. Had a tackle in kickoff coverage at the Auburn 18-yard line, enrolled at Georgia in January of 2021 and participated in spring drills and led the Red Squad with 7 tackles in the G-Day intra-squad game. Not exactly jumping off the page, but he did just that in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, overshot basically every projection anybody could have had for him, I think, too. I believe as a recruit, 3-star guy out of a non-traditional powerhouse in Baldwin. It was an interesting take. We've talked about it here before, but I mean, Louisville was really Georgia's main competition, and there aren't a lot of Georgia-Louisville recruiting battles on the football field. It was a good find. Dan Lanning worked that one really hard, and probably deserves a lot of credit for that one. The tenacity was always there. You could see that on his high school film, but I think to come as far as he has I've definitely been surprised by it. I'll say that.
I think it starts for Bullard with a commitment to playing that star role. And I think I've said it before here, but guys don't love playing that spot. It's a tweener spot, especially in college. I mean, you look at the guys that have kind of gone on to be superstars. It's Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's pretty much it. Yeah. You just don't see a lot of guys jump at that star position. And, the cornerbacks don't want to play it because they want to play cornerback. And that's where the money's made. And if safety can show what he's doing at safety, that's where you want him. And I think Javon is number one, just committed to being like, all right, I'll be the best I can be at this possible position and see how it goes. And I think another thing too is, both Palmer and I wrote stories on this guy this week. And the quote I picked out was kind of more of a, I am where my feet are at. I'm just happy to kind of have a chance to play ball. That type of thing. And I think that type of mindset keeps the game from getting too big for him. And then lo and behold, look at his season. I mean, Tennessee dominated. Biggest game in Sanford Stadium history ranking wise. Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, amazing. Made a huge play in that one. Maybe even a bigger play was the sack.
Yeah.
To kind of help Georgia, help keep Ohio State that end of the field. And then now obviously national championship game, the first 2 picks of his career. So he's a big game football player. You can't have enough of those. And in a lot of ways, he's kind of the Stetson Bennett of Georgia's defense. They're getting a story that's kind of starting to build to that. Big game, he's there. Lightly recruited. Obviously, he got a scholarship.
Big game Bullard.
Yeah, big game Bullard. So yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of things to love about that kid, and I really believe that coming off of that Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl media day, I talked with him for about 5 minutes, and I honestly didn't spend 5 minutes with anybody else that day, just because I started talking with him about the DUI arrest in September, and it was just he didn't shy away from it. It wasn't I don't want to talk about that. It was like I let people down, like I'm not real worried about what I had to do or what class I had to take or how much running I had to do or even that I got suspended. I'm worried about I embarrassed my family. I embarrassed my teammates. I embarrassed, everybody else. And that's just not me. And that's not what I want to do. And I don't know. There was a certain way that he took accountability for that impressed me.
Well, yeah, I really like this quote that you had in the story that you wrote, Jake. It's a privilege. This is Bullard talking about his leadership role on the team. He said, I'm blessed to be in the position that I am. Taking on the leadership role is an honor, and I don't take it for granted. I just want to lead those guys in the right direction, like the leaders before me. I looked up to somebody when I first got here, and I just want to be one of those guys that's looked up to as the season goes on. And, you hear so many people say that, and it's like, okay, let's see it. Let's see you actually do it. Let's see you live that out and actually be that guy that you're saying that you want to be. But I think we've seen the proof in the pudding now for the past couple seasons that there is something about that leadership that, at least with a few of the guys, it does trickle down. And that's a hard thing to do. And that's a hard thing to pull off. And so is repeating as national champions. That's really difficult. And just you look at the microcosms of that. You look at the little things that it takes to do that. And Javon Bullard is trying to be more than just a walking cliche. And I think Georgia's proved, and Georgia's effective leaders have proved that they can do that. They can learn from the leaders that came before them and actually be guys that inspire the younger dudes to step up and take that baton, because somebody will have to do it at some point. Some guy that is, that has a similar bio right now on his Georgia Dogs page will probably step up at some point, and Georgia will have to lean on him. And they did it with Javon Bullard. We'll see who it is in 2023.
I'm curious, Jake, do you think because of the nature of the Stars position being a tweener spot, does that make it more likely that Bullard comes back for a 4th year, even if he plays like he did last year?
Yeah. I mean, also because I don't know where Javon Bullard fits in the NFL, period.
Right.
It's not like, and I try to tell this to people all the time. Well, so-and-so's, better. Man, there are so many college players that were just dominant college football players that just couldn't really find their niche in the NFL. I mean, thousands over the past 20, 30 years that were just fantastic and did all the right things there. And I think Javon Bullard is a 4-year player for sure. I think he's a guy that'll be around for his entirety, and I hope it's injury free. I know one thing. Here's how you know how good Javon Bullard is and how upsetting he is to play against. I posted that story on Facebook. I look at the comments. Obviously I'm glutton for punishment, and there we go. There comes an Ohio State guy calling him a thug and calling him this and that for the maybe their helmets touched against Ohio State, whatever. Clearly not targeting. Just blows me away how anybody watches that replay and sees that. But it's
see
just
what you want to see.
Impactful dude, man. Impactful guy, and just really excited to kind of see what kind of excitement he generates over the next couple of years, because I do think, Roos, that he's a guy that's going to be around for a while.
He gets a lot of honey badger comparisons, which I think are interesting. And then Bob Sanders also comes to mind when I watch him play. I mean, kind of that relentlessness, that toughness, a little bit bigger than Bob Sanders for sure. But
yeah,
did love his game for sure.
As Palmer pointed out in his story, Bullard says, "I'm still the same person. I'm still eating off the floor." And I'm pretty sure that's a figurative statement. Maybe it's literal. I don't know. But if it is literal, then that just shows you how intense he is and how dedicated he is to his craft.
Well, and if we're talking about, the jump that he made from year 1 to year 2, what kind of jump can he make in going into year 3? I think that's something that's certainly exciting. And we talk about him as this, in the star position role in that slot corner spot. PFF did a rundown of the top 10 corners that were returning in college football. Bullard was the only slot corner on there. And if I'm not mistaken, he might have been higher than Kamari Lassiter. I think Bullard came in at number 7. Lassiter came in at number 10. But being the only slot corner on there says a lot about what he is capable of doing at that star position.
I missed where you said that was from Pro Football Focus.
Yes.
Yeah. See, this is where I kind of get a little bit haywire on Pro Football Focus because he may line up over the slot. There's nothing about him that's a corner. He's probably more linebacker than he is corner. And I know he covers and everything, but that's such a hybrid role. And in the NFL, the nickel is the corner. Like he's a third corner. In college, he's an edge rusher, linebacker, safety, then corner. And that's kind of how it rolls.
But when you're thinking about where those guys, those are secondary players. The star is a secondary position. To me, it's a hybrid corner safety spot. You have to be able to play and run support like a safety does, but you have to be able to cover like a corner does. And I get what you're saying that he does have responsibilities in the box and rushing the passer. And I mean, just ask Hendon Hooker. But I do see it as a corner spot.
I'm just going to go ahead and respond to Tom Hog Dog's question here. No, is the answer. Javon Bullard's a fantastic player. The ceiling on Malachi Starks is a chance to be one of the greatest to ever play the safety position at the University of Georgia.
Yeah, the ceiling on Malachi Starks is, being the first safety off the board, maybe could be one day the first cornerback off the board, may could also be a top tier wide receiver if he really wanted to be, and could probably play running back too. He's just that special of an athlete. But back to the corner thing, I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and I was going to say, and if you want to see what kind of a player Malachi is, go check out the Javon story. It ties in the two of them. Javon talking about replacing Chris Smith, replacing Keely Ringo, the current outlook in the secondary. And I tied in Chris talking about those guys replacing him, and he had a ton of praise for Malachi Starks. But go ahead, Jake.
I was going back to the corner thing. I get that's kind of where he lines up. It's just not the function of the position there. He's asked to do so much different stuff than a corner's reason I say that about playing, like calling it a slot corner. I just think when you put him in the same category as a Kamari Lassiter, who is probably on an island covering a guy all the time, and then you got the star position, which is also tied to the strong safety position, and they almost kind of team up to cover everybody. It's just, you're just asking a guy to do a lot of different things, but and it's hard in its own way because, Javon Bullard's got to come in and you saw it with Mark Webb, you saw it with others. They come in sometimes and take on pulling guards. That's just what they do. That's what they're expected to do. They're supposed to go in there and just, like a stick of dynamite, blow up a pulling guard. And imagine Tate Ratledge and his mullet and his mustache rolling around the edge, and you don't blow him up one day at practice, and then Kirby is just chewing you to no end because he expects you to do it a certain way. It's just unbelievable.
That's what you have to do. Yeah. The star, it almost seems like that shouldn't be the name. Like the star is someone that should have the best, most preferential treatment, but you're the guy that's like the alley cat in the mud, like just getting your teeth knocked in every day by Tate by Tate Ratledge. That doesn't
Probably the
seem-
reason Nick Saban, when he came up with that name for it, because I'm pretty sure he named it. Obviously, he wanted a name that was S because it aligned with the Sam linebacker. He pulled the Sam linebacker out to bring in the star. And probably one of the reasons he called it that was probably maybe some guys be like, hey, I'd love to be the star. And then they start being the star and they don't really feel like being the star anymore. There's a long list of reasons of why not to play that position.
Matthew C. wants to know if Kirby is the innovator of the Mint defense and if all of what we're talking about is part of the Mint defense.
I mean, somebody's going to want to give somebody a lot of the credit. And it's really not a Mint defense. It's more of a Mint front. But somebody's going to want to give one person credit for it. But it was probably a brain trust at some point. If I'm not mistaken, Dan Quinn also had a hand in it. It was Dan Quinn. It was guys like Nick Saban, Bill Belichick. A lot of people that run match zone coverage or, pattern match zone are the guys who kind of came up with that because all of it, they had to try to figure out, all right, how do we keep these run games under control with light boxes? And that's something that I think every team would love to do. And, the Mint is what it is. Mint defense is what it is, or Mint fronts. But I don't think you can do it without a certain Jimmy and Joe in there as well.